All right, let's go back to the beginning, and by the beginning I mean the beginning of AFAN. Probably 12 months ago, you and I sat down and started talking about this, but you've been the driving force behind this concept. What was the most prominent thing that crystallised in your mind when you were conceptualising the business?
Yeah, interesting question, mate. I think, firstly, as someone who's on the wrong side of 55 and who specialises in risk, I noticed a few things happening within my own business. And the first thing was that most of my clients typically tend to be 5 to 10 years either side of my age. And when you get past 45 or 50, your insurance premiums really do become quite expensive and in many cases unsustainable. So that was the first thing, was that the premiums were increasing quite dramatically for the clients. Even those who are on level premiums are experiencing dramatic increases. So many of them were coming to me and saying, can we have a look at alternate solutions? But the problem then is, as we all know, as we get older, our health changes. So just changing from ABC insurance company to XYZ is often not an option if someone has had a change of health. The other thing was, as our clients are aging, and I think we find this with most middle-aged people to the older generation, is that their need for insurance tends to diminish. When the kids leave home, as their debt starts to come down, their need for those levels of insurance tends to be reduced. But they do need other services like retirement planning, or perhaps they've got an elderly parent who all of a sudden needs assistance with aged care. And those additional services that my clients are experiencing, they were services that my business wasn't providing. And so that was the first thing. That was the first sign that I, really needed to have a few additional strings to my bow. The second thing that really caught my attention was when Kelly O'Dwyer first proposed the new education requirements. Now, I want to preface this by saying that I actually endorse the higher levels of education. I think if we as an industry want to be seen as a profession, as opposed to an industry, then we've got to accept the fact that higher initial and ongoing education is just par for the course, okay? The thing I couldn't understand, though, is why the decision makers, the rule makers, were lumping us all in together. I still can't comprehend the fact that they don't understand that there's a difference in what we do as professionals. In 30 years, I never have and I never will give advice on wealth accumulation. I don't give advice on retirement planning, but it's an expectation that I undertake the studies on retirement planning so that I can continue giving advice on the area that I specialise in. To me, that doesn't make sense. And if I use an analogy, to me, it's a little bit like an obstetrician having to do further studies on neurology to maintain their occupation as an obstetrician. I just don't understand that. The other thing is I sit on the board of the AFA here in Queensland, and part of my role is to converse with mainly the older practitioners and then report back to the AFA on some of the issues that they're having, some of the struggles and some of their concerns. But the overwhelming response that I'm getting from my older colleagues is that they're really angry. They're really, really angry. They've lost control, and they genuinely do not feel that either body, the AFA or the FPA, really did enough when these first education requirements, or when the education requirements were first put on the table. They're sick and tired of advisors having to pay the price for the sins of unscrupulous bank CEOs, or the rotten apples in the barrel. They leave the industry. The CEOs of the banks just sell the insurance companies, but we're left to clean up the mess, and all the blame comes back onto us. They're really tired of the ever increasing compliance requirements and the costs of compliance. And while our costs are forever going up, our remuneration, our commissions are being driven down. But I think the thing that scares them the most is the plummeting business valuations. They're acutely aware that their valuations are just diving. And most of the colleagues that I talk to, they're relying on the sale of their business to fund their retirement. And now they're getting to an age where there's not many years left, and their businesses are valued at a half, maybe a third in some cases. And that's a scary situation to be in, particularly when the government has said, or the regulators have said, have your educational standards in place or you'll be forced to exit the industry. And that's the thing that they've essentially said to us. The regulators have said to us, get a degree or get out. That's it. They've drawn a line in the sand. And even our industry bodies, they've essentially said, guys, our hands are tied. So get a degree or get out. And even, many of the licensees around the country are saying similar things. There's nothing we can do about it. But my question is, what about options for other people where those two options are not suitable? What if someone doesn't want to undertake 4 to 6 years of further education? What if they've lost the enthusiasm for that? Or what if they don't have the staff that can support them while they've got their noses buried in a book? Some people have spent decades building their business, building relationships, and we're just going to push them out the back door. Do we as an industry just stand by and watch this happen while they're being pushed out? Do we just let all that experience exit? And then, what happens with their clients? Where do they go? Particularly when there's a claim. So when you combine all of those issues, that's why I built AFAN.